What's good out there, Liquid Trucking? Welcome into the Liquid Trucking Podcast, episode 40 for your ear holes. I am your host, Marcus. Thank you all so much for being here today. We got a serious one today. We need to concentrate on the CVSA's Brake Safety Week. It is scheduled for August 25th through the 31st, and I'm going to read you some of what the CVSA's website has to say. It says the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance has announced August 25th through the 31st as the dates for this year's Brake Safety Week. Brake Safety Week is a commercial motor vehicle and driver inspection and regulatory compliance enforcement initiative, a brake safety awareness and outreach opportunity, and a brake-related inspection and violation data collection project. CVSA certified inspectors will conduct routine commercial motor vehicle inspections throughout the week, focusing on brake systems and components. Commercial motor vehicles found to have brake-related out-of-service violations will be removed from the roadways until those violations are corrected. For this year's Brake Safety Week, inspectors will focus on the condition of brake linings and pads. Brake lining and pad issues may result in vehicle violations and could affect a motor carrier's safety rating. In addition, some jurisdictions will have performance-based brake testers and will be using them during Brake Safety Week. A performance-based brake tester is a machine that assesses the braking performance of a vehicle. Educational efforts by inspectors, motor carriers, and others in the industry take place during Brake Safety Week and are integral to the success of the campaign. In addition to educational outreach by law enforcement agencies, transportation safety organizations, and individual officers, CVSA also aims to help prepare drivers, motor carriers, owner-operators, and mechanics for this year's Brake Safety Week. Brake Safety Week also serves as a reminder to drivers and motor carriers of the importance of a proactive vehicle maintenance program and provides an opportunity for law enforcement to highlight the importance of brake safety. Now, there is a question here. Why conduct Brake Safety Week? It says brake-related violations comprise the largest percentage of all out-of-service vehicle violations cited during roadside inspections. According to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's 2023 vehicle violation data, 6 out of the top 20 vehicle violations were brake-related. And last year's CVSA International Road Check results showed that brake system violation was the top vehicle violation, comprising 25.2% of all vehicle out-of-service violations during that 3-day data snapshot of roadside inspections. So there you have it, drivers. It's Brake Safety Week, and we are concentrating on brakes because, well, they make up 25% of the CVSA's international road check out-of-service violations. That's a lot. 1 in 4 people that got taken off the road during last year's international road check had brake issues. I think that liquid drivers, by and large, are really good at maintaining their vehicles, not just the brakes, but beyond that. They're really good at maintaining their tanks as well. But I'm bringing on a couple of the guys that can talk about that from their direct experience today. Really excited that later on in the program, we are going to talk to Tank Asset Manager Alex Munoz. We've had Alex on the program, I think, once or twice before. He's always a great interview. He's got great insight and a ton of experience in the industry. And speaking of experience, we're going to bring on Dave Blotzer, Safety Director for Liquid Trucking, to talk about all of the safety-related aspects around Brake Safety Week and beyond. We will touch on the CSA score. We'll get you lots of good information. And if I know Dave, he and I are going to talk some football towards the end of that conversation as well. So we've got a lot of good stuff for you here. 2 really great interviews coming up right around the corner. So strap in, gear down, hammer down, do any of the things that you need to do. Key down on some mud ducks, if you will, so that nobody is going to bug you while you listen to our podcast about Brake Safety Week, the CVSA, always good for giving us content, whether we like it or not. But I promise you, there will be some very good stuff in these next couple interviews. So buckle up. It's time to get to the good stuff.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Next up here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, I've got Liquid's tank asset manager, Alex Munoz, on the line. Alex, I know you're a busy guy, man. Really appreciate you taking the time to be here on the podcast with us today.
Hey, Marcus. I appreciate you having me on.
It's Brake Safety Week, and as we all know, I'm going to read an excerpt here from CVSA's website. Brake Safety Week is a commercial motor vehicle and driver inspection and regulatory compliance enforcement initiative, a brake safety awareness and outreach opportunity, and a brake-related inspection and violation data collection project. That's a mouthful, let's be honest. But Alex, as the tank asset manager, I wanted to bring you on and find out what exactly you are looking for drivers to focus on with respect to their tanks during Brake Safety Week.
Yeah, Marcus, I know that kind of seems like a not written in layman's terms kind of statement, right?
Yep.
But for the most part, I mean, we go through these safety weeks and blitzes all the time. You know, there's usually at least one a year. Occasionally we have a few more that focus on different areas. You know, sometimes they're focused on, you know, drug and alcohol regulations, and other times they're focused on certain parts of the equipment. And for brakes, specifically on trucks and trailers, you know, on our pre-trips, we do have what's called an air leak down test. A lot of those stops and inspections can include that air leak down test. Realistically, we're looking for loss rates, and you know, it's different for combination vehicles, but for the most part, we want to make sure that we're holding appropriate air pressure so that we're safe going down the road. But, you know, our drivers are really well versed in everything that, you know, is required of them to pass one of those tests. But realistically, on our side of things, what we want drivers to be able to look for is, as they're doing a pre-trip, we want to make sure that they understand what they're looking for first and foremost. And, you know, we don't expect the drivers to be mechanics, but to understand the difference between a brake can and an airbag and a slack adjuster and an S-can, you know, just a little bit goes a long way when it comes to, hey, there's something hanging down underneath my trailer or my truck. It can get frustrating for both of us if we're not speaking the same language.
Oh, I imagine so. And, you know, you talk about the CVSA not writing things in layman's terms. You just spoke a different language to me there when you were talking about the things to look out for. So I do have one question here for you that's kind of coming out of left field, but when you guys are training up new drivers, how much time is spent kind of learning that terminology to make sure that they can communicate well with the shop and help you guys streamline repairs for things like that?
I don't spend a ton of time with the training folks. That's on me. I know I kind of pass that question over to Hanky or Cole Brown to see what level of training goes into educating the drivers. But most of the guys that come work for us have a good background and understand, at the very least, the basic components of a brake system. I mean, every one of us that has a CDL has to have had done component identification as a part of that CDL exam. So, you know, some folks may call some things a little bit different, but for the most part, we should have a pretty cursory understanding, all of us, to be able to get a CDL in the first place.
Absolutely. Good. Well, I mean, it's a good thing that they're training you all the way back in CDL school. I mean, that's kind of the first steps, right? You got to crawl before you can walk. And it's a good thing that stuff shows up on those tests because, you know, we've talked about it on this podcast before. Liquid's kind of higher in the gold standard of drivers. Your drivers have to have plumbing knowledge. They have to have some sort of mechanical aptitude just to do the job in general. So getting a little bit of a crash course on that terminology has got to be a good thing for them early. And the communication, obviously, as you touched on, is such an important aspect of it. Do you have any advice, Alex, for liquid drivers that might help them better maintain their trailer brakes and their brakes in general, especially during brake safety week here?
Yeah, so brake fade is one of the things that we all hear in CDL school or testing, or depending on where you learn to drive. If you learn to drive in the mountains, in the Rockies, or up in the Appalachian Mountains and the eastern part of the U.S., we hear this brake fade discussion or issue of brake fade. And what brake fade is heat saturation making the brakes less effective. So the friction surface of the brake pad material touching the drum over a certain temperature, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's like a 400 to 500 degree range. And then, once it goes over that, we lose our braking effectiveness, and the brake pedal doesn't feel like it's slowing the vehicle down anymore. And a lot of the seasoned drivers already know this from driving manual trucks, but downshifting and using engine brakes is the best way to be able to slow your vehicle down. And again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not a driver, so if I sound goofy with any of my recommendations, that I'm sure folks won't be able to correct me. But with that brake fade issue on drum brakes, we see a lot of fleets switching to air disc brakes. And while air disc brakes have their own sets of issues, the air disc brakes are designed to cool much more efficiently and reduce the effects of brake fade by a huge margin. So more so along the lines of car brakes, where we have drilled and slotted rotors and different brake pad materials. On the big trucks, we don't necessarily have drilled and slotted rotors, but the rotors will cool down a hell of a lot faster than drums will. And so we see a better performance out of braking applications, but we still want to make sure that drivers are using the engine to slow themselves down, the engine brake to slow themselves down, and all of those other skills still apply, even if we are switching over to air disc brake and automatic transmissions or automated manual transmissions. Some of those issues with air disc brakes, though, we do see calipers that bind up occasionally. That's something that you don't typically see with drum brakes. We might have a few different issues, with drum brakes versus disc brakes, but for the most part, it's trying to engineer out some of those issues on the manufacturer side, and the best we can do to support them and keep our drivers safe is kind of a common goal, I think.
Sure. Oh, it's interesting that you mentioned that they're kind of engineering their way out of certain problems of the past. I grew up very close to Cabbage Hill on Interstate 84 over here in Oregon. It's kind of an infamous one. I think it runs somewhere between 8 and 9% downgrade all the way down the backside of that pass. And when I was a kid, I remembered, even with the windows closed and not a lot of air conditioning or heat going, when you were driving down the downhill side in those big sweeping corners, I would always smell burning. And I asked my dad at a young age, what is that? And he said, well, that's just the truck brakes that we're passing. We're passing a ton of semi-trucks, and their brakes are hot because they're coming down fully loaded, such a steep downgrade. And now that you mentioned that they're sort of engineering that fact out, or at least trying to, I'm realizing that over the course of my adult life, I have not smelled that smell near as many times going down the backside of Cabbage Hill there. So it seems like something that the brakes are getting better as time goes on, obviously, like a lot of technological advancements, but these ones seem to really be helping. I also don't see as many trucks planted in the runaway ramps going down that hill as I used to as a kid.
Oh yeah, sure enough. I grew up in on the East Coast in the Mid-Atlantic area, and going through Pennsylvania. Seeing trucks in those runaway ramps was a pretty common occurrence. But through the years, I agree with you. I see less and less, and we still don't have it all figured out. Obviously, brakes are there for a reason, and some of those engineering controls are great. But I know we've got some folks who probably disagree with that too. So it's kind of a catch-22, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And always working to get better from the standpoint of, good parts, good products to put on the trucks, but also good drivers, good training, and knowing the ways to slow yourself down. I mean, we've talked about it on this podcast plenty of times. It's a lot different hauling liquid in a tank than it is hauling a dry van or a reefer down those hills with the way that liquid shifts. So keeping yourself up and making sure that you're still really good at all those techniques, using your engine brakes and downshifting if you've got a manual, is definitely a good idea. Don't rest on your laurels, as they would say. My next question here is kind of I think it's a point of pride for Liquid, but I'm going to defer to you for that. Are there any problem areas that you'd like to see cleared up regarding tank maintenance or maintenance in general that you've seen recently? And if the answer there is kind of no, are there any points of pride that you would like to congratulate the drivers on for doing really well in those areas, Alex?
Yeah, so I just got a clip over from you or Jason from Nathan Dobrins, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he was giving us a shout out, the truck and the trailer shop shout outs about how quick we have folks out and hopefully able to address some issues for some folks, whether or not they're stopping in on their way out or they're stopping in on their way back. That was in place long before I started. But folks who are eager to help these guys out and get them back on the road and making money for the company, I think that just kind of speaks to the culture that's been here again since Roger started, long before I've been around. And Gabe and Josh helping promote that atmosphere too. We've got people like Bo Whipple and Dave Minershagen and Dylan Hinton and Trevor Sheeran in the trailer shop, and plenty more folks who, at the drop of a hat, will drop what they're doing and run out to see who's pulling up with a trailer to help get them fixed and out the door. I think that's not something that you can hire in. That has to be something that gets trained, and these guys have done a hell of a job doing that for years. One of the things that I have noticed a gap in is paperwork. So I recently had some third-party maintenance facilities that we rely on. I recently communicated to them to put some more documentation in the trailers as we have some of these annuals done at their locations. And that was brought to my attention by a driver who came up and said, "Hey, I've got some outdated paperwork." And as we were looking through it, I realized the companies that were using outsourcing some of these tank inspections have not been putting a copy of the federal annual in there. And that can get the driver into kind of a sticky situation when it comes to a roadside inspection or even just getting pulled over and asking for documentation. So one of the things that I'd like to see is folks starting to check that paperwork pretty regularly during pre-trips. If we find expired DOT paperwork, reach out to the trailer shop, reach out to your dispatcher. We all have access to a shared drive where we try to keep that information up to date every time that gets done, and we can email it to drivers, print it out, whatever we need to do to get those drivers safe and compliant is a common goal of ours. I think encouraging folks to continue reporting any of whether it is paperwork or other defects, encouraging folks to report that to us anytime that they can, whether it's through Deliver Recon or through their dispatcher or calling in. I'd like to encourage that to continue happening. Just any communication is better than no communication. If we know about a repair that's coming in before it's here, we can try to prep, we can try to have parts on hand and really get this equipment turned around quickly and safely.
That's great stuff there, Alex. And I'm so glad that you mentioned so many of those names of the people, behind the scenes there at the shop that really drive the bus, because they're busy, and so busy that we don't get a chance to talk to them very much on this show, yourself included. And I think that's the mark of a really good truck and trailer shop, is that, hey, there's not going to be time to sit down for 20 minutes on a podcast very often when we're running such a tight ship here. And I'm really glad that you called those names out, because it takes a village to run that shop as efficiently as you all do. And hats off to you guys for the job that you do. I've never heard one cross word about the shop And I've talked to a lot of liquid drivers at this point, man. So I got to say, it's all good marks coming from the guys out there on the road, at least in my experience. So I just want to extend that congratulations to all of you out there involved in the trailer shop. You do a phenomenal job. And that kind of brings me to my next question here. You have a lot of experience in your career, Alex, not only managing the trailer asset side of things, but you've also managed some truck side as well. What are some key differences that you have to focus on while managing the trailer side? And did your experience on the truck side make the transition to the trailer side easier for you, or was it more difficult because it was so different?
Yeah, so for folks that don't know, I came from a oil and gas fleet, managing trucks and trailers as kind of married units. So coming to a fleet like this where we have units that aren't necessarily married makes it a lot easier for us to manage truck and trailers separately. And so my experience on the truck side, I was a diesel mechanic for a while, working on all equipment. And one of the things that I can tell you about trucks and trailers is trucks, even in the past 10 years that I've been working on them, have changed dramatically. I started out working on older trucks with mechanical fuel pumps and a lot more mechanical components, and watching those transition over to all electronic and ECM controlled components. It's incredible what some of these engineers have been able to design. It's also a pain in the ass. So the mechanics have to know how to interpret fault codes and follow diagnostic protocols, and being able to repair the truck side of things has become more and more complicated. And that hasn't necessarily transitioned over to the trailer side of things. We have ABS modules. We have some sensor monitoring, I guess you could say, but nowhere near the truck side. So on the truck side, these guys have to be able to tell the difference between check engine lights and malfunction indication lamps, and understand which levels of fault codes will affect the trucks in which ways, and figure out if they can get somebody limping somewhere or if it's going to shut the truck down. And, I'm sure the drivers have all experienced different levels of that as well. On the trailer side, realistically, if we have an ABS module go out, unless it's leaking air and to the point where we lose all the air and the tractor protection valve sets the brakes and all these other fun things, we can pretty much limp the trailers just about anywhere, as long as the tires are filled with air and we can get rolling. But I think the biggest help in my career so far has been from being a mechanic. So understanding that, a set of brakes isn't going to take 5 minutes, and understanding that changing out a set of axles and some subframe isn't going to be a one-day job. And I think that's helped me kind of temper expectations when it comes into dealing with dispatch and helping dispatch coordinate what our maintenance goals need to be, and working with the folks over the road to figure out who we can dispatch where and what realistically we can get fixed over the road. I think that's more so than truck or trailer experience. I think it's been my mechanical experience that's helped me through this role.
Sure. Well, you're definitely not the first mechanic to tell me that the switch over to a lot of electronics in under the hood of a vehicle is a pain in the ass. I had a 1972 Chevy when I was growing up, and I used to be able to pop the hood on that thing, and it was a 350. I knew where everything was. I might not be able to take it apart and put it back together for you, but I could point to things and tell you what was going on. Man, I got a 2014 Silverado now, Alex, and if I lift up the hood on that thing, I might as well have just opened up a computer and tried to figure out where everything goes. I've got no idea. So the fact that you guys not only can make that transition, but also be effective at it at the same time and execute properly is just another feather in your cap there in the shop. And again, you guys do such a great job over there. I feel like that can't go understated. So your experience in the past has definitely helped out. I can tell just by listening to you talk about it. But I do want to know, what are some challenges that you've faced on the trailer side that you never saw coming before you jumped into this gig?
So one of the things that I took for granted managing trucks was being able to locate them with relative ease. And by that, I mean all the ELDs that we've been using for probably the past 10, 15 years have come with some level of cell phone communications, whether it's CDMA or GSM data. As we've transitioned from 3G to 4G devices, the accuracy has gotten a lot better. One of the things that I didn't expect to have so many issues with trailers specifically was locating the assets. And I've gotten a few devices in demo, and so some folks might see some trailer trackers on our assets. Some of them are solar, some of them are hardwired, some of them are battery. And what we hope to see in the future is, if we find a product that suits our needs and that we can justify accordingly, we'll be able to have a little bit better visibility into where our assets are, and that way we can try to make life easier for the drivers, finding an asset, picking up, dropping off, and dispatchers and maintenance. So that way we can help coordinate with data instead of, well, we're pretty sure we dropped this trailer here. If it's not there, you should probably check again. I didn't expect that part of the job.
For sure. Well, I bet that was a very empty feeling the first time you were going over your assets and all of a sudden didn't know where one was exactly. I mean, even being within a 3-mile radius of it, you still probably be like, man, I'd really like to find that truck and actually lay a hand, or that trailer and actually lay a hand on it, just so I know exactly where it's at. That's interesting. And yeah, like you said, kind of out of left field of a challenge there. I when I sent you that question, you told me kind of how you were going to respond. I did laugh just a little bit because that's definitely not what I expected you to say, but it's interesting. And I think this is a good way to tell the drivers, hey, you might see some of this on the tanks. All we're trying to do is know where these things are at. It's a pretty simple thing.
Right.
Well, Alex, you've done a great job here so far today. It's been awesome talking to you. Talking about Brake Safety Week and the tanks that you manage. But I do want to ask you one fun question here. As summer gives way into fall, what's on the docket for you? I know that it's been super hot over there. I've heard something about the corn sweats out there in Iowa and Nebraska, making it very humid for you guys. Do you have any plans as the weather starts to cool off? Maybe some things you'd like to get out there and do?
Well, Marcus, I think you and I are both weekend warriors, so getting a few more rounds of golfing this fall when it cools and I can get my kids out on the course with me, I think that's really what I look forward to in the fall. So maybe we'll see you out there if you're in town, but that's really the only thing on my agenda.
Man, I would love to get out there and play some golf with you guys out in Nebraska. Never golfed in the Midwest. I think my furthest east golfing experience has been Phoenix, maybe Glendale, Arizona area. So I know about golfing in that type of oppressive heat, but I've had a lot of people, say that they'd like to get me out there on a course, and I would love to get out there and get some time in with you. Are your kids starting to take to the sport? Are they kind of riding along and just watching at this point, or you got them out there actually swinging clubs, Alex?
Oh, my son can hit the ball, roughly 25 feet pretty straight. He's 5 years old, and putting is atrocious. He tries to swing for the fences even on the green, so we're getting there. My daughter is a little too young to be keeping a handicap just yet, but we'll see.
That's awesome, man. Well, I totally get it. You sort of described my game and your son's game right in a nutshell there. I need some help on the greens, my friend, but that's Tank Asset Manager Alex Munoz joining us here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Alex, can't thank you enough for your time. Great job. We'll get you back on here again soon, okay?
All righty. Thanks, Marcus.
Next up here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, I've got the safety manager from Liquid Trucking on the line, Dave Blotzer. Dave, thank you so much for being here today.
It's great to be here, Marcus. been a while.
It has been a while, and what better time to bring you back than during Brake Safety Week? As we know, CVSA's Brake Safety Week is scheduled for August 25th through the 31st, and this year they are focusing on the condition of brake linings and pads. Brake lining and pad issues may result in vehicle violations and could affect a motor carrier's safety rating. That's right from the CVSA's website there. Dave, just to start out here, I know that there's an obvious answer to this question. The question being, what would you like to see drivers focus on during Brake Safety Week? I get it, brake safety, but what specific aspects are you looking for, Dave, as the safety director?
Well, obviously we want them to check the brakes out, but it's not just during Brake Safety Week, which in which we'd like to have the guys check their brakes out. It is part of the standard pre-trip inspection. So, to single it out for this particular week, we send out messages and let guys know what's going on, but we do expect the guys to check their brakes, ongoing, not just for a specific week. But, you hope the guys do a good job of it. They don't want to get put out of service. It's going to cost them time and money if that happens. We could be late on a load, numerous things that you don't want to go on. You get a bad inspection and it goes right on your safety scores on the CSA program. So, not really asking them to do anything extra, just do the things that you really need to do on a day-to-day basis. So not really a lot of change, but we have been sending out messages and letting them know what's coming and, that it is here. So hopefully guys are doing a good job and taking good care of their equipment.
For sure. And one of the things that would suggest that they are is a good CSA score. How's the CSA score looking right now? And is there anything in there that you would like to see cleaned up, Dave, or anything that you would like to give a little extra praise for at this point in time?
Well, I'd certainly like to praise both the drivers and our shops because our maintenance scores are in great shape, and they're trending downward, which is also excellent. Although a couple of bad inspections can really shoot that number up, but there's really no concern, overall concern on our end of being in any danger of having trouble with the DOT over our brakes or any part of the maintenance program as far as that goes. So to say, you could always, say, hey, we can get our scores down to 0, which, on the scoring, that would be the best score. It would be awfully hard to do because we do have, roughly 2.5 trailers per driver. And we have roughly 175 drivers. So that tells you how many trailers we have. And it's awfully hard to stay on top of every one of them all the time. But overall, our staff, between the drivers and the maintenance crew, have done an outstanding job. So I can't give them anything but praise on what's going on with us here. So we're in very good shape at the moment.
That's great to hear. And, we had Alex Munoz on, the tank asset manager, just before you here. And that's the same thing I found myself doing, was kind of heaping praise not only on the drivers, but on the shop. It's such a tight ship over there. Those guys do such a good job with everything they've got. And one thing that Alex brought up that was very important to keep that maintained is just communication between the drivers and the shop. And I'm sure that there's a bit of that communication aspect that comes into talking to you, Dave, where it's like, hey, if you've got a question about something safety related, the best thing we can do is have a chat about it and get that figured out before it becomes a bigger problem.
Well, that's very important. And I've been in this program for years, and then we brought in Bo Hankey and Cole Brown within the last couple of years to help with the safety program, and they're in charge of the driver training, and they do field a lot of calls from drivers on all types of different issues. And then if something needs to be related to one of the shops, we make sure that's taken care of right away. So things are good on that end. We always encourage the drivers, as much as possible. Don't go out and do anything that you're not sure of. If you've got a question on anything, whether it's the load, the mechanics on the tractor or trailer, call in here first. And, everybody around here has experience in the industry, and we can help these guys make the right decision when they go to start their day or or any time during the day for that matter. So, we've got a lot of emails. You'd probably believe how many emails go around this place in a day's time, but that's the best way to keep everybody on top of things. And at the moment, and for quite some time, it's been working quite well for us. So we're really happy with what's going on right now.
That's great news. Love it when we get a great review like that, especially from somebody in your position, Dave, that's got a lot to oversee. In your experience, getting back to the Brake Safety Week, when the CVSA has these safety campaigns active, do you, over the years, see a higher chance that drivers will be pulled over and inspected? Or is this something that they there's a lot of pomp and circumstance around it, but really what they're trying to do is just reinforce that daily safety thing that you were talking about, where we're not asking drivers to do anything different. We're just asking them to make sure that they're taking care of all these protocols and keeping their eye on all the things that matters. What's your experience there, Dave?
Well, overall, I was thinking about that the other day. I've been through a lot of these over the years, or the company has, and I've never really noticed a big uptick in the number of inspections. One year, though, I do remember, I don't know if this was intentional by the DOT or not, but it seems like we had a bunch more inspections just before a campaign started and a bunch just after. So I don't know if there was something psychological they were trying to do, probably figuring that drivers are going to check the stuff during a deal like this Brake Safety Week and then just forget about it afterwards or beforehand. So I don't know if that was something they were doing just to maybe, obviously get more, do more inspections and nail more people for not doing what they're supposed to do. But overall, I haven't really seen a significant uptick in the number of inspections during these things. I'm sure if I got right down to the bones of it, there probably is more inspections on the average during these campaigns, but it doesn't seem to be significant.
Sure. And
as far as I can tell.
Right. And that's the reason I had that question written down here is because that seems to be what a lot of the drivers that I've talked to have experienced as well. It's not a thing where all of a sudden for the week between the 25th and the 31st of August, everybody's getting pulled in, everybody's getting inspected. It's really not like that. It's just kind of a flag. Hey, we're going to pay attention to this a little bit closer for a week. Just want to make sure that you're still going through and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, if you will.
Yeah, and I think it's a good thing for the drivers to maybe have, their brakes, have that attention drawn to them, and maybe they'll, decide in the morning that, there's a brake safety week going on. Let's take a look at these things, and then maybe after that they do a little bit better inspections before they head out on the road. So, I think there's a lot of good things involved with it, even if we don't get inspected more. But drawing these specific issues to the attention of the drivers can do nothing but good, I think, overall.
Absolutely. I agree. We talked about the CSA score, obviously, with respect to Brake Safety Week and everything. I'm wondering any other safety issues that maybe don't have to do with brakes or anything like that. You said the CSA score looks good. Ideally, we'd get it down to 0, but that's a monumental task. Anything that you'd like to see cleaned up at all across the board at this point in time that we can alert drivers on and maybe encourage them to do a bit better?
Well, I did mention earlier that we do send out a safety message daily. We had a little uptick in our log violations a while back and, started sending out some pertinent messages, and those numbers are also working their way downward. So we're happy with what's going on out there on the road, but that's a category that we could probably do a little better in overall. So that's the hours of service is probably the one we could use a little bit of help on. And one thing the drivers need to realize, and let's say they ran over their hours one day during the week, well, that stays on their electronic log for 7 additional days. So if they were to get pulled over for an inspection 3 or 4 days later, and they had a DOT inspector that knew what he was doing, he'd go back on their logs and he'd find that violation, and he could still write that up after the fact. So just preaching to the guys to not run over at all if possible. That's the best route to take, for our scores and theirs too. So that would probably be the one area where we have tiny bit of concern, but overall the guys are doing great. So I can't sit here and complain about how they're doing overall because our scores are very good, and we just got an audit from our insurance company here about a month ago, and he was looking over our scores, and he was quite impressed too. So we're very happy right now, but obviously things can change real quick, and hopefully that won't be happening anytime soon. But you don't want to rest on your laurels because things can change very quickly.
Sure.
You know, with a fleet our size, which we're not giant or anything, just a few bad inspections can really jump those numbers up. So anyone that we can avoid out there is a step in the right direction. So like I said, we're very happy with our drivers' performance out there and the shops also too. So
sure.
Things are looking pretty good.
That's great. I love to hear it. And, I can tell, just hear it in your voice a little bit when you're talking about sending out the daily messages and seeing a place that needs to be cleaned up a little bit, seeing those numbers trend down and seeing drivers just, accept that as something that's part of the job and we've got to do better here. It feels like a sense of accomplishment, obviously, for you as the safety director, but really it's a sense of accomplishment for the entire company. We've talked about this before on the podcast where with the CSA score, especially, one bad apple can kind of spoil the whole bunch, especially with the way some of the violations get weighted and how long they stick around on the CSA score and how, one bad day can affect the CSA score going out 6-12 months. So these good marks here, this good review of the CSA score and where everybody's doing well is really, I think, a big deal. I don't want to understate it at all because this affects the entire fleet and everybody pulling their weight is instrumental to making sure that, you guys aren't on mandatory pull-in status or something like that.
That's correct. And, over and above that too, we have, some of our bigger corporate customers, they will look at our CSA scores and, I suppose they have an internal audit and decide whether or not to use us to deliver the products. And, if the scores get bad enough, they'll probably look elsewhere. So there's a lot more involved than just us here physically. It goes, it expands out to all the businesses that we deal with. So the CSA program, it's a complicated program. I'm sure you've read into it a little bit, but, we try to stress to the drivers that what they're doing out on the road, affects us significantly. So keeping those scores down is just imperative for the health of our business.
Absolutely.
So we want to thank those guys out there. Everybody out that's involved in it. Everybody's doing a really good job so far.
Hats off to the drivers and the shop for that. Keep up the good work. It's kind of cool on this podcast. We haven't had to have one of these episodes where I get you on and we kind of dress down a certain, portion of people that have been missing something. It's normally good news that we get from Liquid Trucking for the CSA score, the safety, all that stuff. And, we talked about it before. We hire the gold standard of drivers here, and they're really, living up to that title when you see that CSA score and all the customers are happy. And like I said, just don't want to let it go understated, and I don't think you are at all. I'm talking about that from me. I want to make it sound like as big of a deal as it is.
Well, it certainly is, and I usually do a little presentation during orientation when we bring in new drivers, and we cover the CSA a little bit. And one of the things I try to stress to drivers when they come in is this is your chosen field to make your living. You might as well try to be the best driver you can. And the CSA is a big factor, and it's a good way for us to look at an individual driver and just kind of see how they're doing on that program, because it's not designed specifically for us to judge a driver's performance, but the data that goes in there, including clean inspections, really helps us to focus on certain areas where a driver might need some assistance. And we're more than happy to do that because, if these drivers out here are successful, that means we're successful too. So everything's intertwined. And I think sometimes an employee doesn't understand that, especially in this specific line of work. So our guys certainly seem to be giving us the effort that we need. And, everybody benefits when they do well out there. So we're very happy with what's going on, and hopefully that's going to continue for quite some time.
Awesome stuff there, Dave. Really appreciate that kind of assessment of the entire thing from the top down in safety. We don't get you on here very much, but every time we do, I find that we always get really in depth, really quick, and it's easily digestible when we have you on, Dave. So I can't thank you enough for bringing all this great info to the podcast here. But before I let you get back to it, I know you're a busy guy. We're recording this just a couple days before the big 3-day Labor Day weekend. Football season is here, Dave. I can barely keep my heart in my chest. I'm so excited about it. But as summer gives way to fall, what are you looking forward to? You big football guy? You got any hunts coming up? You just looking forward to the humidity dying down a bit over there?
Well, that would certainly be nice. It's pretty toasty down here today, but no, I'm a very big college football fan and have been for years. And I understand your team is joining a conference and going to have to play the big boys from now on.
We are, and it's been quite the welcome over the last 6 months or so from all of you Big Ten fans out there. Are you a Cornhusker? Are you an Iowa Hawkeye? Are you an Ohio State guy? Who are you rooting for?
Well, I'm actually a Cornhusker. My dad and his business partner had season tickets clear back into the early 70s. So I think the first game I went to was in 1972.
Wow, that's awesome.
Everybody that's listening, I was really young, so just so everybody knows at that time. But and then I did go to school down there too, so I've been to a lot of Cornhusker games, and it's a state pride thing, and it's just a lot of fun. Whenever I go to a game, believe it or not, I run into a lot of people I know. So we love it here. We don't have any professional sports, so the Cornhuskers is about it. So most everybody I know is pretty well behind them. So we're always looking forward to fall and a chance of a good season again. It's been a while for us.
Well, you've got a great quarterback there in Dylan Raiola. He was committed to Oregon at one point in time, and we lost him in the 11th hour. And you also have a transfer running back from the University of Oregon named Dante Dowdell, and that man is he runs like his hair's on fire. He runs over people, and I'll tell you, we don't have to play Nebraska for the next couple of years. I don't think Oregon and Nebraska meet until 2026, and I'll be honest with you, I don't want to face Dante Dowdell. I saw what he did when he was in Eugene. I think you guys are going to have a really good year with those two in your backfield.
Well, Nebraska's offense wasn't very good last year, but they definitely have some upgrades going as far as we can tell. Of course, the season hasn't started, but we do have most of our defense back, which was a top 15 defense in the country. So, yeah, we're pretty excited about it. So can't wait till Saturday.
Well, I can't either. Nothing like a Saturday afternoon with 60, 70, or 80,000 of your best friends sitting right next to you. Looking forward to the banter that will come out of this college football season as you guys welcome us West Coast Fiends into the conference with the big boys. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, Dave, just can't thank you enough for the time today. Anything else that you'd like to say for to the drivers or anyone listening before I let you go?
Well, drivers, just keep up the good work. We love having you guys here. You're all professionals, and anything we can do to help you guys do your job better, we're certainly more than happy to do that. So keep it up out there. We're doing well, and let's keep moving forward.
That's Safety Director for Liquid Trucking, Dave Blotzer. Dave, thanks for the time. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Marcus. Thank you. We'll see you.
All right, Liquid Trucking, there you have it. We're putting a bow on episode 40 and dropping it in the mail. Big thanks to Tank Asset Manager Alex Munoz for coming on. That was such a great interview. I got blessed with two amazing interviews today. You want to talk informative. Sometimes it helps to hear the people that really know what they're talking about, have a ton of experience, just talk about things for a while. And Alex was big on communication and also big on praising you drivers out there and the shop as well for doing such a good job and maintaining such a high standard of work around Liquid Trucking. And then, of course, my thanks as well go out to Safety Director Dave Blotzer. We don't get Dave on here enough, man. He's so much fun to talk to. And I'll tell you what, I learned today that Dave and I could talk about college football for hours on end. You guys will learn that about me if you don't already know. I know I've been a little bit obsessive about college football in the past. As you know, giant Oregon Duck fan over here. And we've actually been cleared to do a little bit of talking about college football on an upcoming episode. So I will tell you to stay tuned for that because it's going to be a lot of fun. And I feel like, as I talked to Dave about, I feel like it's time to get that official welcome from all of you Big Ten kids out there. I want to hear it, man. If you think that Oregon is going to come in and just get a mud hole stomped in them, then let me know. If you think Oregon's going to do well, I'd love to hear from you too, like my buddy Quincy out there. There's an Oregon Duck fan or two hiding in your midst there, Liquid Trucking. I'm not sure if he's a big Oregon Ducks fan, but I know Drew Hearn, driver for Liquid Trucking, has been out and about in my neck of the woods. Got some family over here, spent some time over here as a kid. And let me tell you, you get too close to Autzen Stadium, where we call home, it gets really hard not to root for the Ducks. So come on out here to the West Coast and see me. For those of you that have my number and those of you that want it, if you're out here on the West Coast, you're out here in the Eugene, Oregon area, kind of right there in Central Oregon on I-5, and you're going to be pulling off for a stop, or you're going to be taking a 34 or something like that close to my neck of the woods, get at me. I'll come out there, have a sandwich and a cup of coffee with you, and we'll talk college football. We can talk hunting. We'll talk trucking. We'll talk whatever you want. But I feel so fortunate to be kind of part of this Liquid family. I've heard a lot of drivers on this podcast talk about how close-knit the drivers are and the company in general. It's a family company. You don't feel like a number. You feel respected. You feel heard. I feel like I'm part of that too. And that's why I'm telling you, I've got thick skin. If it's time to talk a little mess when it comes to college football, lay it on me. I can't wait. So excited for the season to kick off. And very happy with the culmination of today's podcast. I thought there was a ton of good information in there. Getting back to the meat here, Alex and Dave had great interviews, and hats off to you guys. Both the truck shop, the trailer shop, and all of you drivers out there have been working very hard to maintain this gold standard that Liquid operates with. And I got no negative marks anywhere from Dave or Alex. Everything was positive, and in the trucking industry, especially in a market like we're in right now, that's not always something that happens for fleets the size of Liquid. So congratulations, big round of applause to all of you for working your asses off out there and doing such a great job. Be safe out there if you do get a random inspection, and as always, keep the shiny side up. We'll see you next week, Liquid Trucking.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.